Quiet on the set! Quiet on the set! Everyone check their notes for the revisions, especially lighting. Make sure your notes are updated, and remember, we cut the musical number from Act 2. It's spooky early access and we're entering real witching hours.
Why are we doing spooky? Halloween was like weeks ago.
Nonsense! Any day can be Halloween, if you're autistic enough.
I can appreciate the gravity of the situation and the urgency of our predicament, but I must inquire as to whom it was that died and made you the stage manager.
Stage manager Mike. He died and made me the stage manager.
Michael has passed away? When did this happen?
This morning, about 15 seconds after I killed him.
He always said it was his dream to die someday.
Perhaps coming through! Oh! There you go! Well, thank you! What a bunch of assholes. Developed by Gator Shins and published by Hellforge Studios, Coven finally entered early access on October 24th in the year of our darkest timeline 2024 after, 2 years of only having a demo? It's one I'd been keeping an eye on for a long time, and it was cool seeing how the demo updates changed over time and just how big of a jump in quality we went from going to the demo to early access. Demos were kind of spooky in a more colonial era style of Quake, moving into the downright spooky woods, green glows, and foreboding haunted castles backlit by a moon too big and too bright to be naturally occurring, only slightly obfuscated by the burning churches and windmills that I may or may not have had a hand in. Basically, if you've been watching for a long time, you got a sort of mini time-lapse watching the atmosphere being crafted in real time. It's pretty sick, but it also provides some extra insight into where things are going, and will hopefully help guide us in our little assessment as we kick off the one true Walpurgisnacht with two 10-gauge double barrels of fun. You are some lady, and a priest doing the godly thing has decided that femoids are the source of all the world's problems, and you gots to burn for it. Only issue is that the priest was actually the source of the issues the townsfolk were experiencing, and through the incomparable power of voodoo, we return to deliver the most apocalyptic Uno reverse card of all time. And yes, voodoo! Not witchcraft, not the ineffable power of Satan, but voodoo! It's always voodoo! All the world's problems? Voodoo! The solution to all the world's problems? Voodoo! 2 plus 2? Voodoo! If Shang Tsung is not the enemy this time, then who is? Fucking voodoo! It's always voodoo! It's never not voodoo! Write this down, it will be on the test! Anyway, when starting a new game, we get a nice little cinematic of our body being torched, in which the heat distortion doesn't affect this night in particular, and we resurrect to bring brutal, gory, and just downright heinous vengeance upon a world which wronged us. What follows is an only slightly insane spooky romp of some of the best OG boomer shooter, gore, jibs, and dismemberment, punctuated by brutal tracks, brilliant atmosphere, absolutely kick-ass art direction, level design somewhere between Quake and Unreal in an incredibly satisfying way. but with combat that overall leaves a hell of a lot to be desired, and it's overflowing with mechanics that are so insanely unbalanced that it's impossible to tell where they are going with them. For a preview, Quake has been dethroned for potentially having the worst shotgun in all of boomer shooters, and it's by this game's double barrel. But we'll get there. First up, I want to talk about the fun stuff, the atmosphere, the aesthetic, the art direction, and the pretty pixels. I love it. Sure, the textures on enemies are like super 90s, but each enemy type is visually distinct, even from the absolute furthest ends of the draw distance, so that at no time will you ever have any confusion about what the enemy running toward you is going to do. You will easily recognize the difference between basic mooks, semi-ranged mooks, the different types of ranged mooks, and even the most visually similar super knights are visually distinct enough and easily let the player know what abilities the one they are about to encounter have at their disposal. Environmental design mixes muddy towns, earthy hamlets, deep woods, and many more very distinctly and naturally. Different settings flow differently, and level 4 mixes all of them together, giving the player a very strong look at how each one functions differently, even if the seams between them are super obvious. The dark, gritty nature of it all plays well together with the green glows and spooky atmosphere, combined with the insane carnage heralding your arrival. It plays a lot into cartoony horror aesthetics I like, while leaning more horror elements and slasher flick violence. There's a beautiful dance being conducted in each level, and seeing one flow to the other is where the game is really knocking things out of the park. Levels start off quick and simple as they're easing the player into the mechanics, but then quickly expand and just get absolutely huge, with upgrades being pretty far off the beaten path, hinting at further secrets even further off said paths. A small example of this comes in level 3 when you go to a side path, find a ship which has a pistol upgrade and a note hinting about a sunken sister ship, which if you just go for a little swim can then find a massive stash on. The following level takes all that combining of settings together in a level that opens up further, and then further, and then further, to the point that it gives you 2 different paths for completing the level, and even an extra weapon upgrade if you want it. I like that, but I would have liked to have either seen an extra level added in between for the lower exit, or for it to start the player off in a different spot for the next one. It doesn't. We're still early access, so that could potentially change.
Level 7
involves traveling through time to World War II, spoiler for the narrative, in which the level basically becomes a linear Call of Duty riff, complete with dramatic and cinematic set pieces, no secrets, and a fairly linear design. The level is probably the shortest in the game, running just long enough to give the player time to appreciate the joke, but with enough challenge that it doesn't feel like a waste of time. They do this second time in level 9, the final traditional level, Atherton's Mansion. It's a mansion filled with zombies that sees you navigating around and through it collecting keys to doors, opening shortcuts, and even solving a puzzle with paintings being your clue. Not only that, but the layout of the level and the manner in how zombies immediately run you down, requiring you to quickly make decisions to dispatch them, once again completely changes how the player is actually playing the game without them really realizing it. In the World War II level, it becomes a military corridor shooter but keeps the player making quick moves in and out of cover. In the homage to the Spencer estate, the game is having the player make fast decisions while being rushed down by enemies that quickly melt your health bar. They wear their influences on their sleeve, but they applied enough forethought and craftsmanship to keep the game flow mostly the same, almost to the point that the player may not even realize they've begun playing a different style of game, just with the same mechanics. I'm highlighting this aspect to drill in that levels are built with incredible care and vision and doing their best to make sure the player gets what the devs are putting down and doing their best not to make it feel like a waste of time. It has fun with not just itself and its premise, but with the player as well. What it does pretty differently from most boomer shooters is let you look down and take a look at your feet. Yeah, feet! Everybody loves it! Who doesn't love looking down at an FPS and seeing that they do in fact own at least one human body? And what's more fun is that as you collect keys, they get added to your belt and you can look down and see each one. Whoever made this game is a fucking genius. Oh hi! Every step of the game from a visual standpoint and level exploration and experience is just absolutely top-notch. Just the experience from looks alone is on track that I absolutely love, and... Excuse me. Hello? Oh hey, how's it going? Yeah, no, I'm just sitting here doing my stupid bullshit. How about you? No, I was about to talk about that here in a second. Uh-huh. Probably about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Okay, bye. So anyway, it's small bullshit, but it just adds that much more layer to the visual complexity and treats that really help the player into the world and... Oh, that? That was just the call of the winter moon. Yeah! The soundtrack isn't just clean riffs, it comes close sometimes, but it's dropped just enough and distorted just enough that it really hits. It's not a complex soundtrack, but it actually does something I suggested the devs try way the fuck back when Nightmare Reaper launched into early access. Yes, I hate clean riffs in boomer shooters, especially when they're crafting an atmosphere and aesthetic, but what I dislike more is when there's no fucking music or ambience, then a battle track fades in, and then all of that goes away when the encounter ends. Way back when Nightmare Reaper first hit, I suggested layering the track. Not quite like, say, DMC5 or Hellsinger, where a combo meter determines how much of the track is playing. What I recommended is that a specific part of the composition be used as the atmosphere. In the aforementioned, I believe I talked about a couple portions playing, possibly through atmospheric filters to give a muted exploration effect to the environment, with the filters being removed and the rest of the composition coming in when a battle starts, with it fading back to what it was before when combat was over. And everyone disliked that. However, I'm happy to say a similar idea is employed here and it works out phenomenally. So what they do is they have an atmospheric level to each track, a little bit of synth, maybe some pianos, something to set the mood. Then a fight starts and the metal comes in accentuating the track, turning it into some, I don't know, earlier Cradle of Filth or super early Dimmu Borgir. In a couple of levels, the atmospheric portion also acts as the lead to the track, namely in the Assault on Atherton's Mansion where piano is leading the player and when the guitars and percussion kick in, it's now acting as the player's voice to a battle hymn. When we get spooky horror with low-poly Slaughterfest action, there's nothing I love more than good black metal, and while they never stray too far into it, that level 4 track actually hit me like a fuck yeah moment. Down-tuning, distortion, tremolo picking, aw daddy, it made me want to burn a church and be just a big ol' fucking genre elitist. And I already burned a church in the second level, so please look forward to a 16-video essay series on the fall of Norway as the home of black metal. Part 1. Where did all my Nazis go? Part 2. Finland. You're not getting Mick Gordon or Chris Vrenna levels of composition. How the fuck could you on such a small indie budget and studio? But you're getting far more, at least for my taste, than what Holschult's metal tracks give you. And that's not a dig at good old Andy. When he's designing atmospheric tracks and going full otherworldly, he's kicking serious ass. But every metal track I've heard from him is Mick Gordon at home. Derivative, chasing something he's not, forgettable, no atmosphere, evokes nothing. And that's not to say that Coven completely blows it out of the water. There are some segments that felt a little more generic, but sometimes perspective has to take over and a few moments of cleaner, less inspired riffs from composers I don't think anyone has heard of before today is more excusable when the rest of the track and the other tracks are pulling so hard for the atmosphere. And that just leaves us at the mechanics and combat, which we'll have to take together, as how they come together is where the game leaves a hell of a lot to be desired and the direction of the game starts to get muddy. I mentioned time travel, and the witch gains access to period-appropriate weapons as well as anachronistic ones due to Atherton playing around with the time-space continuum. You get a flintlock pistol, a pump-action shotgun, a break-action double barrel, a crossbow, MP4, bombs, a railgun, a good old hatchet and shield for your melee option. Each weapon aside from the bombs, hatchet, and railgun will have upgrades hidden in various levels, and while most are fucking great, 2 of them are purely questionable, with one of those later 2 actually proving just how bad the double barrel actually is. The pistol has a decent rate of fire, is accurate to a pinpoint, and it only gets better as the game goes. You can find a fanning upgrade to charge up 3 shots, and later can find an upgrade that will cause bleeding, making weaker enemies die faster, and allowing the player to put a shot or 2 into an enemy, and leaving them to slowly die while your attention is elsewhere. The pump-action shotgun is a beast of pure murder. Utterly insane damage with the tightest spread of a shotgun I've ever seen, with infinite range. You can pop heads with a single shot from the absolute furthest reaches of the draw distance. If it is on your screen, even a single pixel tall, you can snipe it, and anything short of a knight will instantly die. Less damage is dealt to the body and legs, of course, but it's a better head popper than the pistol is. It's absurdly powerful, only made even more powerful by its upgrades. The pump action has 2, but the second overwrites the first. The first allows the player to queue up multiple shots for auto fire. You can chamber 2, 4, or 6 rounds to fire in rapid succession, meaning its first mod not only does what the double barrel does, it provides options to do it even harder. The second upgrade replaces this, but gives the player access to a nail bomb launcher. It's the flat cannon's shell launch on absolute cocaine, with very short range but pure devastation. If ever there are 2 or more super knights, shooting one of the bombs right behind them will wipe all of them out immediately. It's the most powerful shotgun with the most powerful options I've seen in a boomer shooter, and its range is just fucking silly. The crossbow starts off requiring you to charge your shot, but instantly takes the heads off of unarmored enemies. You have to adjust for shot drop, but otherwise it's incredibly powerful against mooks and enemies that throw bombs, molotovs, or holy water. Essentially, it's an instant kill headshot on anything that isn't armored, but upgraded crossbowmen and knights have armor, and it deals less to armor than even the flintlock does. You upgrade the crossbow to be auto-fire with a secondary poison shot. The poison shot covers the weakness against armor by infecting enemies hit, causing them to withdraw from combat, and eventually they explode in a burst of acid that will damage enemies that walk through it. Against armored crossbowmen or the beekeepers, it becomes a reliable way to remove them from the fight before they become a problem if you don't want to waste an explosive. The MP40, it's an MP40, and while it chews through ammo, is a beast due to a mechanic that I don't think is intentional, but we'll get there. The bombs let you charge your throw, and if they hit an enemy, instantly explode, but they also have this lovely tendency to just be duds. Then comes the railgun, and it does what you think it does. Rarest ammo deletes the heaviest enemies, and then you have the starting hatchet and shield. Shields block damage but have their own health pool before they break, and the hatchet allows you to dismember enemies on kill. If you charge your attack, you spend 10 mana and deal massive damage that one-shots most of the weaker enemies, and that leaves, well, you know.
It's an 88 Magnum. It shoots through schools.
It sounds badass! It pushes you back when you fire it, making you really feel like a 17th century woman wielding a world-ending boomstick. And it fucking sucks! It is probably the worst shotgun I have had the displeasure of using in a boomer shooter. First off, the range is absolute donkey ass, the absolute lowest in the game, giving it less than half the effective range of the crossbow, and the spread is utterly insane. The weakest enemies in the game will be cut in half by it, but at point blank range, with its absurdly wide spread, 2/3 of the pellets fucking miss, causing it to deal less damage than the pump action to anyone you can't immediately kill with a single headshot. The lowest rank knights will take 4 to 6 shots from the pump action to kill, but they will also take 4 to 6 shots from the double barrel. That means they'll eat 8 to 12 shells from it. If a knight is anything but dead center point blank, you will deal less damage than a single round from the pump action. The only time the double barrel is in any way effective for its ammo consumption requires 3 of the weakest mooks to be standing side by side with you firing at the one in the center, and it's literally impossible for that to happen. What makes it even weaker is that it appears damage compounds the faster you deal it. 2 rapid-fire pistol shots appear to deal more damage than 2 slightly spaced apart on their own if neither is a headshot, and the MP40 seems to have its output ramp up when holding fire on larger enemies. What's more, the pump action's multi-fire ability just chews through even the toughest enemies. Remember when I said 4 to 6 shots to kill a basic knight? Well, the pump action mod lets you ready up 2, 4, or 6. At 4, the knights die by the 3rd round, and I've even had knights drop from only queuing up 2. It genuinely appears as if the faster damage is dealt, the more it actually applies. Essentially, if one pistol shot deals 45 damage, 2 over the course of 2 seconds deals 90 damage, but 2 fired rapidly multiply and deal 135. Now apply that to like 8 shotgun pellets in a tight formation, which insta-headshot killed just about everything except knights and beekeepers, and apply that multiplication to the rapid fire. I don't know if it's a glitch or not, but it applies to every weapon, and the break action has no rapid fire, insane spread making it so that at a minimum 1/3 of every shot misses every time, and you have abso-fucking-lutely worthless weapons. You get bombs and explosive skull spell, so if you don't want to use the nail bomb upgrade, the pump action is already more reliable than the super shotgun, but now its damage is more deadly. Fucking worthless. Shame for disparate. And that brings us to that old black magic. That's right, it's time to talk about some motherfucking voodoo. Fellas, is it gay to vomit upon the cross? Gather round, my bastard children, cause we're going to hear about the luscious gifts Satan can bestow upon you. Magic missile, pyromancy, siphon soul, slow time, ghostly lynchings, raise the dead, and explodey fucking skulls a la Clive Barker's Undying. And while it's technically not a spell, you also gain the ability to charge up acid for a big ol' acid vomit. If you tap Magic Missile, you fire a single shard. Charge it to level 1, you shoot an orb that deals some damage but stuns and passes through multiple enemies. If you charge it to level 2, you fire a machine gun volley of shards and it melts the big shield holding knights. Just straight up insta-kills them. Pyromancy requires you to sustain the spell, but it will set enemies ablaze and it's necessary to kill bees when they swarm you and will also cook enemies for extra health when eating them. Siphon Soul lets you recycle corpses into mana if you don't want to eat them, Ghost Lynching does what it says on the tin, Necromancy is Necromancy, and Explode Skull is a rocket launcher. Sounds pretty cool, but the mana economy kinda fucking sucks. Regaining mana comes in incredibly small increments of 5 from vials, 5 from food, and like 10 to 15 from Siphon Soul. When you first get access to magic, the game tutorializes you telling you that mana wells exist and drinking from them give you 100% back. And then I never encountered a single mana well for the rest of 2 entire playthroughs. Eating food will only give mana back, but siphoning from corpses destroys them, meaning that you can't eat them to refill acid and health. Gallows requires 30 goddamn mana, will insta-kill anything that isn't a Mega Knight or Super Cardinals, but you can't use those corpses to recover any mana, health, or acid. Quite literally, it's 1/3 of your magic resources for an enemy you have 12 options to insta-kill, and it removes any ability to recover resources afterward. I used it 3 times, and then never again, across 2 playthroughs. Explodey Skull is a percentage chance to drop. It doesn't require mana, but every time you eat a skull, you have a chance to recover a preserved skull to use for it. Necromancy you're introduced to at the end of the last level with no one to use it on before the final fight, and in the final fight you have to run around so much and enemies chase you down so much that it can't keep up, meaning you have 3 completely fucking useless spells. Now, the Necronomicon you get access to allows you to read about spells to see what upgrade options it has, but just like the mana wells, if there are any in the current build, I never fucking found them. And now we can talk about the Acid Spit. You get to eat people you slay, eating corpses recovers 5 health with a max of 104 on normal and 154 on easy, and not really sure where it caps out on hard. If you cook an enemy, eating them recovers 7 health per part that you eat, but no matter what you do, each munch only recovers 2 acid. Acid can then only be used when it's at 100, and uses all of it. Now, granted, you can play around and target your shots in such a way that you maintain 3 munches per kill, but it means you spend a lot of time eating rather than meaningfully engaging in fights. A single crossbow bolt deals 30 damage to the player, meaning I have to eat 6 body parts to recover that damage. Meaning I have to spend more time working on recovering health and acid than I actually spent fighting those enemies. So how do that pukey power work? When fired, it shoots a ball that leaves a massive pool of acid that enemies will get trapped in and die very quickly. And when they die from acid, they explode. And when they explode, their bodies can't be harvested as food. So it's another lengthy to build, insanely powerful, but gives you no options to recover any resources after using. It's not useless, it's actually one of, if not the most powerful ability you have. But in a game that gives you no less than 6 options to insta-kill 3 of the most powerful opponents at once, it's just another power weapon that you hoard for when it's necessary, removing the catharsis behind wielding such devastation. But why exactly would you hoard? It's a boomer shooter in which all but 3 of your 15 options is a power weapon, so why are you doing any hoarding at all? Well, for one, the ammo economy isn't exactly balanced. Just when you're running low and have to start rationing ammo and magic, you're suddenly brought back up to full, and then have to fight multiple Super Knights in a row eating through all of it. So you naturally start hoarding explosives, acid, and mana. You naturally want to pick your shots better. You naturally play more conservative than the game equips you for, and then it gets worse. Diggeth if thou wilt yon picture. You're going through a level, battle track starts playing, 3 dudes are coming down the way. You snipe each of them with a headshot long before they've even considered threatening you. Music keeps playing. You don't know why. 45 seconds later, you discover a crossbowman on a platformer, snipe him with the shotgun, and then the music just stops. Turn a corner a little later, revealing a Super Knight, you roll a single bomb at his feet, he and the second Super Knight you didn't notice behind the pillar die. Lather, rinse, repeat. This is only ever broken up by like 2 big fights and the final battle with Atherton. What you mean start planning for Windows 10 end of support? This motherfucker's pulling up, hey, upgrade to Windows 11 in the middle of me fucking recording. Bitch, get the fuck out! What the fuck? You wield devastation. Serious Sam would get hard seeing what's at your disposal, and all of it aside from 2 spells and the double barrel are boss killers in any other game. What the fuck was that, Windows? You have nothing to use all these superpowers on. If you aim for the head every single time, you will never get close to low ammo. If you suck as bad as I do, you'll get low, but you may only ever run out of the crossbow. The game gives you the power to slaughter an entire village, but never throws said village at you. It gives you enough tools to trivialize the most difficult fights they can muster, but there are so few enemies and they are so basic in their functions that they just can't threaten you in any way that is satisfying. You are always holding 100 trump cards and you never need to use a single fucking one. You only do it because this encounter annoys you and you just want it to be quick. 100 aces up your sleeve is a lot, but they take a long time to come by, so you hold them because you never need them and you only use them when you think it would be really fucking funny. Also, there are only 2 AI protocols in this game. Melee wants to get close, ranged wants to keep a specific distance and will use any opportunity to get away. Super Knights want to get close, but they're slow and all their attacks are ranged anyway. Enemies that throw shit function the same as ranged. Super Popes fly and don't worry about how close they are, they have infinite range. It's all handled the same when only one of my 15 options isn't ranged. Slow time doesn't even factor into any of this. If it's big and it needs to die fast, I make it explode. If there's a lot and I'm cornered, that's what I saved Vomit for. If there's a lot and they're all super weak, then why the fuck am I even thinking about it? I want to feel like I'm fighting an entire village and city that have been turned against me by a priest practicing necromancy and time travel, but we never get there because the encounter designs, enemy AI, and level designs aren't built around that. Ammo, magic, health, and acid economy have literally zero balancing for a game that encourages you to use them often, so they get used rarely if ever. Everything that isn't a shotgun blast to the face costs too much in resources or in the time I will have to dedicate to recover those resources. Seriously, if I kill 3 mooks and a crossbowman but I get hit with a single bolt, I will spend more time eating their corpses to recover that health than I spent killing them. 80% of the enemies die from a single headshot from the pump action from across the map, and you will rarely ever encounter more than 4 enemies to deal with immediately. That is the actual gameplay in a nutshell. Wimpy AI, wimpy encounters played against world-ending weapons, universe-shattering spells and nail bombs, and earth-dissolving vomit. Sprinkled in are 2 to 3 useless spells and the worst break action in boomer shooter history. The combat, as well as the mana wells, supposed spell upgrades, and finally the pump action and its upgrades, throw a wrench into where the game looks to be going. The story is barely there, but fine enough, I guess. Atherton is a priest who was discovered in an old witch coven's cave and began practicing necromancy. Then he discovered time portal technology and he started causing problems for the people. He blames the lady, she resurrects as a witch, and now she gonna kill him. But aside from a couple of letters and some portraits, you never really see or hear of Atherton until the fight with him. And when you do fight him, the model used is just some generic Catholic priest. He doesn't even look badass. He looks like Reverend fucking Putty without the toupee. Yeah, at the end when you defeat him and the combined powers of love, friendship, and voodoo and blow his fucking head apart with a weapon you spent the entire fucking chapter knowing for a fact it isn't capable of doing is great! And if you're on fire at the end of the fight, you still get this cool fire effect in the cutscene, but it's hollow! The build up to him is pretty subtle, but it's there and you can't miss it. But you never see or hear from him, and there's no real direction or identity to the combat or its spell systems. As the game released, we can see some ideas for where the project is going, but it's all thrown by the wayside by an abundance of weapons and mechanics that have no sensible economy or real way to feel like anything we are doing has any real consequence or even motivation. I don't feel any more motivated to fire a U-damage boosted flat cannon shell off over a regular bomb, or vomiting, or charging magic missile, or a rocket skull. The game has a massive vision visually, aesthetically, and atmospherically, but the core mechanical vision is overly bloated, poorly implemented, and given no real oomph fight enemies in combat that fail to reach the level of complexity and engagement that Wolfenstein 3D hit. So it's a hard game to recommend. It's beautiful in ways few boomer shooters will manage, but its gunplay is fucking dick balls.
Lots of beans, lots of beans, lots of beans, oh beans, lots of beans, lots of beans, lots of beans, yeah.
And I would be remiss if I didn't offer suggestions, possible solutions, or ideas. And some of these will be mutually exclusive despite being placed right next to each other, but these are just ideas. First off, enemy and ammo economy need rebalancing. The way everyone just single files towards you means that even in the more open areas, it's just a corridor shooter. When you're paying attention, it's cool to notice how the gears are turning, but I wasn't looking for anything specific and was barely paying attention on my first playthrough, and yet the way the gears were turning was making itself blatantly obvious to me. It's overly simplistic. Enemy AI needs to be more diversified. The Super Knights need to be able to move faster, and the lowest rank of said Super Knights need a melee threat. Crossbowmen should have their attacks reduced to one shot at a time, but with programming that drives them to avoid the player more. They should be running in and out and trying to outplay the player. Then the armored crossbowmen who fire 3 shots that set you on fire and have headshot protection can come in and just be normal. But a well-placed shotgun blast kills them both at the same pace. They need changes to actually make them threatening and varied. Encounters need to be made bigger and ammo pools need expansion. It wants to be the Night of the Witch's Reckoning on the Mott and Bailey that is sending every able-bodied man and even the state military after her, so I need to feel like that is the hill I'm climbing. I also need to feel like my weapons that deal world-ending devastation are actually doing that. Better ammo economy, more varied AI, and just more enemies feeling like actual threats will go a long way to making me feel more inclined to actually expend the 6 fucking nukes you give me. If bringing us closer to Doom 2 or even Serious Sam territory isn't an option, then complete weapon and magic rebalancing needs to be up first. First off, mana needs to slowly regenerate over time. Vials, food, and Siphon Soul need to have an actual use to waste time on, other than just sitting around spending more time recovering resources than the time I spent on the last fight. I mentioned Undying, and that game had regenerating mana with a few ways to get boosts. Maybe implement those. I shouldn't be sitting here with the only resources that it actually struggled to recover being the least desirable to do so. Gallows should be an AoE. Instead of killing a single target, it should capture all enemies in an AoE for 3 to 5 seconds. The light enemies, not big guys, which would then require me to expend one of my more valuable resources to get quick kills on the group. Take away its kill, maybe have it deal a tiny bit of damage, but be a tool that really only helps to gain breathing room or in conjunction with the more powerful options. Pyromancy sucks. It serves one purpose, and that's dealing with bees and beekeepers when I don't have an explosive or a poison bolt. I have a million of those, by the way. 2 extra health if I cook an enemy is fucking worthless. Get rid of it, or make it faster acting to catch an enemy on fire. Necromancy has no effect. When you get it, there's no one left to use it on. During the boss fight, when you can use it, it does nothing because enemies are chasing you all over the map. Get rid of them! Either give it earlier and completely rework Necromancy, or get rid of it. Siphon Soul should have a real fucking effect. Make it a trait that can be unlocked which regens mana on its own. Finally for magic, get rid of slow time. It similarly has no purpose. Next up, the shotguns. The pump action has the tightest spread of all time and is a sniping tool. That's funny, but it's stupid. Shotguns aren't long-range weapons, and they certainly aren't a precision weapon. It's cool to have that spread at point-blank range, but the pellet spread should increase over distance. I should have a real reason other than low shotgun shells to be using the flintlock. Remove the nail bomb and make it an upgrade for the bombs. Maybe an alt fire that uses 2 bombs. That way the resource expenditure is higher, but what the player gets out of it is multiplicative. Instead of multi-shot as an upgrade, make the upgrade give the shotgun a second barrel to replace the break action. Then you can fire 1 shot with the updated but reliable spread, or use the alt fire to fire off both barrels with a less effective range, but more devastating up close. And okay, I've done my bullying of the double barrel and we've had our fun, but it's not a completely trash weapon. At mid-range, the range most boomer shooters play at, it will still cut the most basic enemy in half while still having the potential to put the mook next to him in the stun state. Yes, I mentioned it will take 4 to 6 blasts on a basic knight to take it down, but I want to stress that it's at that range. At point blank range, it will aerosolize their torso in 1 shot. The problem is, unless I'm paying an off-duty fireman, I don't want a fully armored knight waving his broadsword in my face. Its issue is that in a game in which everyone is running me down, I want to keep them at bay. A weapon that loses all its effectiveness if I can see anything that isn't the target's torso doesn't provide very good feedback to the player in those situations. I want to keep my distance, so making the SSG a panic button to clear out the heavier fella that got through just feels bad to use when you add in animation delays on swapping weapons and refresh after firing. And maybe it has something to do with the damage issue I talked about. Maybe it's not multiplicative based on how quickly the damage is dealt, maybe it's just an RNG table a la Doom and it just shows up in goofy ways. But the broader point is, those same knights can be instantly killed at distance by 2 shots from the pump action's rapid fire option, and I've even had 2 shots from the flintlock's fanning kill them. Being an absolute beast but only at a range where I'm about to lose a chunk of health just makes it undesirable, especially when I have 10 other options that liquefy the target before they even know I'm there. I'm not sure how to improve it outside of revamping its spread, how much damage it deals at an effective range, and amping up enemy counts with improved AI. Maybe just axe it? Make the pump action's mod be a double barrel and swap its texture to the one for the break action when it upgrades, because as it is, it's good. Sometimes. And when it's good, it's damn good, but it's just so unreliable and it only compounds with the other mechanics. Next, the flintlock. Remove the fanning mod. It's a muzzle-loaded, pan-fired gun. What the fuck do you mean fanning? It doesn't use percussion caps or a cylinder. We have other options for rapid-fire weapons, and its rate of fire isn't even bad enough to warrant the effort wasted to use on fanning. And okay, let's get autistic here. Yes, it's a video game. A flintlock pistol should have at least like a minute between shots. But there's some suspension of disbelief to every fucking video game. Yes, being able to blam with a flintlock, it's just a video game thing. I'm replacing a period-appropriate weapon with the most basic gun in any boomer shooter. Sure, we can say her witchcraft reloads it, but we're talking about slam-fired P90s. What are you doing? Also, a flintlock pistol will launch something from a 32 to 45 caliber ball between 600 and 1,000 feet per second depending on caliber and load, which excavates a Panama Canal from one end of your skull out the other. Headshots with it should kill anything that isn't armored. Balance it out by destroying the head so it can't be eaten or harvested for skulls. Maybe make damage increases like making the headshots one shot a mod. I talked about making the nail bomb an upgrade for the bombs. Also, make it harder to get. Going out of my way and killing 3 priests means nothing to acquire that level of power. Make it a real fight that actually tests the player's endurance and skill. And when you get it and you climb the ladder on the other side, have 3 super knights and a couple regular knights waiting so the player can have a safe zone to test out and see the real effectiveness of the ability they just picked up. The worst thing about having 6 nukes is that at no point does the game try to highlight for me just how hard I fought to acquire that power or how devastating it can be. Everything is projectiles. That's great. Perfect. Leave it that way. Seeing the 9mm bullet just before it hits my dumbass right between the eyes is pure Kino. Projectiles for life. Hit scanners, exit the hall. And finally, Atherton needs to be reworked. He's a complete non-entity in the story, and when we finally reach him, he looks like a background NPC from a fucking Noah's Ark game I played years ago. Make him look like an actual priest, and maybe have him show the fuck up a couple of times. The witch got set on fire and woke up in the dirt, and the game gives me no reason to give a fuck about the guy. I got burned at the stake and buried one time, and when I woke up, the first thing I did was check my phone to find only 3 hours had passed, my ass was still having to go to work that day, and my crypto investments had lost value. I certainly didn't go on a rampage of evil to cast out evil. Give this man a presence and a reason to fucking hate him. In level 2, when I'm entering the abbey at the graveyard, take control away from me, pan to the door slamming closed behind me, and then pan up to the rafters where Atherton is taunting me. Maybe have him delivering some pseudo-religious diatribe about NFTs and meme tokens before the Molotov enemies, who we won't see for a few more levels, set the building on fire, which then forces me to go down into the basement to find the knight and the exit. Also, give him some robes that look somewhat priestly but corrupted. Show us how a man of God has been corrupted by his dabbling in necromancy, and punctuate it by having him show no qualms with setting fire to a consecrated building if it means bringing it down on top of us. Later, maybe in the World War II section or on the space station, have him bamboozle us again, this time more corrupted, but now talking about how voodoo coin wasn't a meme token after all, and is actually a safe coin. Maybe give hints as to what he's learning about all that's going on, and hint about what will come in later chapters. Then finally, at the end, when we're doing battle, have him at his worst. He's become the mockery of Christianity as we become the mockery of his great work. The shoot him in the dick and blow his head off ending after proclaiming he was supposed to be immortal is just limp. You're doing a trope that isn't new. Priest railing about the evils of magic while trying to pretend their use of it is holy has been done to death. It's so boring and trite that Magic the Gathering dedicated a whole 2 sentences to it in the novel accompanying Ice Age decades ago. Make it at least visually interesting and a bit less pathetic than, "Please, am old and don't wanna die." Make it actually worth giving a fuck about before and after. I don't know what future chapters are set to contain. By the title and hints about things that Atherton discovered, I wonder if it will be an anthology of different witches' stories. But as is, I can't see our protagonist's story being any level of compelling going forward. Her crypto investment journey was already unengaging, uninteresting, and thoroughly unsatisfying, so I can't see where you could take her story that would make it better, especially without completely new enemies taking over in those chapters. The Mace and Axe guys wore out their threat before the first level ended, and they lost their charm by the end of the second. Especially if combat receives no readjustments and mechanics don't get completely retuned, this game won't survive past the first chapter. And that just fucking sucks, because the atmosphere, art direction, devastating weapons, spells, and ideas just need a bit more reworking to become great. As it all currently is, all the amazing shit I absolutely love here won't mean dick because it will get lost and forgotten in such bland-ass gameplay. As much as I say the story and graphics don't matter, they do when you want to tell a story and when you want to actually craft a memorable aesthetic. It's clear you want to do that here, and you're doing great on every level except story and gun and game mechanics. Without making the actual gameplay compelling, all the hard work will be forgotten. Without more compelling presentation to the story, none of what's already there carries any weight, and none of the gameplay mechanics are good enough to just be mindlessly beautiful spectacle. Coven gets a soft recommend. What's there looks, sounds, and mostly feels fantastic, but playing loses its luster rather quickly and gains zero momentum throughout. Until the combat and magic gets overhauled, there just won't be reason enough for me to hard recommend it. It's not a walking simulator or atmospheric late 2000s style shooter. You need to come to me with better than what we had in 1992. I'm the Necroswanson, and you can go fuck yourselves. Guess that's why it was dinging at me earlier. It's like, hey, we see you're doing something, we want to fucking bug you. We're Windows, we suck dick. We suck all the dicks in the world. But we're better than fucking Linux, so suck a fucking dick, monkey chode.